Well, let's talk about some stories. Maybe some favorite stories. Tell us a story about Ray Charles that maybe you'd like to share with people that they might not know.
Well, Mr. C was just incredible. And I think probably one of my favorite stories, the Hilton and Convention Center here in Greenville, North Carolina, started putting on shows, and they invited Ray Charles as one of the acts. And I wasn't performing with him at the time, but when he found out that he was coming to Greenville, you know, the band knew that I was here and knew that Rhonda and I were here, and so everybody was excited. And Mr. C said, the only thing that I want, the one condition is that Carroll drives me. Now, the way the Greenville Convention Center is set up, the Hilton Hotel is adjacent to it. So there's really no drive. I mean, you really can walk through the breezeway and get from the Hilton to the convention center. But Mr. C wanted me to drive him. And the interesting thing about that whole scenario was when I saw him, I said to Rhonda, I said, he looks awfully thin to me. He doesn't look well. And so he didn't say anything initially, but so on one side of the convention center was where I had to pick him up. I mean, one side of the hotel was where I had to pick him up. So I picked him up on that side. He got in the car and he said, "Hey, baby, hey." He said, "Man, you certainly helped me out over the years." And that was when he told me that he wasn't well in the car. And literally the drive was around the building to the end. And that just kind of devastated me, because I just said, wow, the prognosis wasn't good. And so that was difficult. That was difficult. But one of the other stories, this is a little lighter than that. Years earlier, Ray Charles was here, and he was going to play at Minges Coliseum on ECU's campus. And Minges Coliseum is the big basketball arena. And but the thing that is very interesting about Mr. C, and his business was pristine. I mean, everything was right. But one of the things that always was true about him, he never received his balances in anything other than cash. Okay, so on the concert, they wanted to have an opening act. He had to approve the opening act. So he said, who's going to be the opening act? So they asked me to be the opening act. So he said, Carroll's doing it. He said, okay, fine, no problem. Everything is good. So everything is cool. We're on stage now. We're playing.
And who's in your ensemble at that time?
This CV was playing drums.
Your son.
My son. I think John Osment was playing keyboards. Jeff Baer was playing saxophone. I don't think we were having a guitarist at that time, but it was a nice group. It was a good
And these
group.
are some of your cronies from East Carolina University,
and
friends,
DC,
family,
yes,
DC, yeah.
yes, and so it was a great group, and we were playing. So we're about to finish up our set. You know, the auditorium, the Minges Coliseum is packed. Everybody's a joke. But nobody wanted to see me. They wanted to see Ray Charles. So we're playing, and then all of a sudden, I look over to the side of the stage, and there's Joe, who's Ray's road manager, and he's waving. He's like, and I said, "Oh Lord, something's going on." So then he came back and
Why don't you play a little longer?
Stretch.
Yeah,
stretch.
People are familiar with that hand signal.
Yes, they would stretch. So I'm like, okay, so we're stretching. And then he comes back again and says, stretch again. And then he does this. So I knew immediately. I said, oh, Lord, they don't have his money in cash. They had either a certified check, a university check, some type of check.
And he didn't accept
He
that.
was he's not going to budge. He was not going to budge, not going to go on. And so what was funny, one of the musicians in the band, he had his big band at this time, so he's got the bus, the Raylettes, and everybody. So one of the musicians they're standing on this side of the stage, they're laughing like, "Hey, man, we coming by the house." And Rhonda is like backstage now, and she's like, "You're not bringing that bus by the house." And the whole band was coming by the house, and they were going to hang because he was not going to go on. Somehow they worked it out, and they got the bread, cash. And
when the banks were closed.
Yes, well, the banks were closed.
Yeah.
They got the cash, and then Joe came back to the side of the stage. He said, I'm like, "Okay, boop, 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 we're out." And then he went on, and it was good. The funny thing about that, I think maybe 2 months later, I joined him in Copenhagen, I think it was, because I went out. That was in early fall, and then so maybe around Thanksgiving, I think we went out, and I joined the band, and I joined his band and Maceo's band in Copenhagen, and it was great, and we laughed about that. We just laughed and laughed and laughed because he was there. And a lot of the artists, the Motown artists and the black artists, were like that and are like that because they got stiffed so often. And Aretha Franklin, doing the gig with Aretha Franklin, what's funny about that, when Aretha Franklin, is the pocketbook story. If the pocketbook was placed under the piano, the gig was going to happen. We were going to hit. Nothing was going to happen until that pocketbook was placed under the piano. And that's the inside stuff of the artist. And it was great. So we knew not going to do a thing until that pocketbook is there.
Let's talk about Melvin and Maceo Parker for a minute. Mm-hmm. James Brown's band, 2 different stints. They worked with James for many years, and then Maceo went out on his own, and you traveled with him, and then they went back. Tell us an interesting Maceo story.
Maceo is such a great guy. He is a person who plays incredibly well, knows music. I always tease him because he has perfect pitch. I mean, and he says, "No, man, I'm not perfect." I'm like, "Yes, you do, man. He has perfect pitch." If he hears the fan running, he can tell you what pitch that is. And I mean, he's just an incredible, a showman, but very, 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 very precise in what he wants. He knows what he wants, and he demands that of you. And I think he got that from being with James Brown. There's one funny story, and he'll kill me for telling this story. But this, we were in Japan. And I had just flown out. I met the band in Japan, and they had been out touring, and I met the band in Japan, and this was the first show. No rehearsal, no nothing. And so we were doing we were playing, and and I'm really concerned about nailing the music because I'm the new cat now on this particular hit because everybody's been out playing and everything is kind of gelled. So I'm playing, and we're doing the steps. I'm playing, and and this is the step that we're doing. It's not a lot of choreography, but just a little bit. So I'm doing this, and so I was on it, and I'm playing the music, and then I thought I was doing everything right. Everything was good. So afterwards, we were in the dressing room. He said, "Hey, man, we were doing this. It's cool, but then we did this. You didn't turn." He said, "Make me happy." So the next night, this is just the second show, so I'm still like, I'm trying to make this music. And it was so funny because we're doing the step, and everybody's doing, and then it's like a little kick, and then you spin. I missed it again, but I'm not thinking about it because I'm still working on music. So now he's standing right in front of me, wherever he was. Initially, he worked his way over to where I was, and he's standing right next to me, but he's facing that way, and I'm still facing this way, and he's looking at me. He's like, Without playing, it's just that's that's a Maceo story.
Great
He didn't dock me. But that was it was close. It was close.
Your relationship with Maceo continues today.
Yes.
While you don't see him on a regular basis, even though he's only 30 miles away, you recently did a European tour. There were television shows that are playing in Europe, recorded an album. Tell us about that band and what you did. His latest CD, as far as today's terms, called Love.
Yes. It's all about love. Maceo called me and asked me would I do a project with him, and I said absolutely, of course. And he didn't tell me what the project was initially, but he ultimately told me what it was, and it was a recording, a video, and a concert with the WDR Big Band Orchestra, the whole, which is a great.
Explain what that is.
Yes, the WDR Big Band and Orchestra. It's an entire unit. It's a state-sponsored musical arts organization. They have an incredible facility, concert halls, rehearsal halls, recording studios.
And this is located at?
In Cologne, Germany.
Cologne, Germany.
And it's just an incredible, some of the best musicians in the world.
So something Democratic Republic. What does WDR stand for?
And you know what? Since you said that,
yeah.
I can't.
But something.
Yes.
Where the right. Yeah.
Yes. But it's state sponsored.
Right.
And
in Germany.
Yes, in Germany. And we went over, and so it was about 14 days of rehearsals, recording, video, concert.
Tell us about your bandmates.
Yes. Well, all WDR big band members in the horn section. And Maceo brought Cora Coleman in as the drummer, who was Prince's drummer.
A female.
Yes, female. And another Howard University.
Pretty hot.
Yes, incredible.
Quite a player.
Yes, incredible player. He brought me in to be with him. So we were the featured artists. Obviously, Maceo's gig. And he did a recording, and the recording it's all about love. And it's love songs. One of the songs, Who's Making Love? We did Isn't She Lovely? Stevie Wonder. And it was just an incredible experience. A lot of fun, a lot of great music, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of great musicians playing. And Michael Abene was the arranger. He did the arranging and some incredible charts. And we had such a great time. And the recording is out now. And we did recently. Maceo did a Ray Charles reunion band, and his manager called me and said, "Actually, don't tell Mace that you're on the gig. We want it to be a surprise." And so
this is Natasha.
This is Natasha,
which is his personal manager.
His personal manager,
from
agent,
England,
yes,
for many
from
years,
England,
right?
yes. And she called, so we decided to do the gig. Everything was good, and said, "Don't tell him." And got there. And it was actually in Richmond. It was at the University of Richmond, and it was for their finale for their performing arts series for the year, and it was great. He had several members of the Ray Charles band. Maurice Pleasure was one who was famous from Earth, Wind, and Fire, keyboard player, and he had us play as he had a lead trumpet player, Maurice Pleasure. I was playing bass. One of Ray's last drummers, and I can't remember his name right now. I'm sorry. And guitarist, and Maurice was playing keys. We were the 5 people that they brought in for the alums of the band. Maceo, and we just, it's like, "Oh man, Carroll Dashiell." We hugged the whole thing. But the extra surprise was Melvin Parker came to the
his
gig.
brother.
His brother came to the gig. And I hadn't seen Melvin in a little while, and it was so good to see him. So it was like a big family reunion. And what was really interesting about that gig was it ended up, because it was in Richmond, that a lot of the service bands service members bands, like the Airmen of Note, the Army Blues. So a lot of guys that I knew from the DC area were the cats in the band in the horn section. And but what was funny, we did probably about 30 songs from the Ray Charles book. And but then, of course, it was being Maceo, we had to do something from Maceo's book. So we did a couple of Maceo's book. And I was the only one there that had played in both the bands, Mr. C's band and Maceo's band. And a couple of the pieces we did was off of the new record that we had just done with Maceo in Germany. And it was fun. It was a great time. And the fact that we were able to see, the family. It was family. So it was very cool. It was very cool. Okay.
So I think, Carroll, one thing that I want you to talk a little bit about is how personal instruments are to musicians.
Yes. Yes.
They're your best friend. They're your companion. You spend a lot of time, how they sound.
Yes, absolutely.
How they feel. All very important. And next to you is a bass that you're very fond of. Tell us who made this bass and how did you come to know about it?
Well, this is a very special instrument to me for a couple of reasons. I actually started playing this bass when I was with Bobby Watson and Horizon. And we were on Blue Note Records. Bobby was the leader of that. Bobby is the saxophonist, composer, arranger, director of jazz out at the university in Kansas. And but more importantly, he's just an incredible musician. But he was the only person that Art Blakey designated as his musical director. And Bobby started the group Horizon, and I was fortunate enough that he called me to play in the group Horizon. And we were actually getting ready to go overseas. I think we were going to be overseas for maybe 3 or 4 months or something. And but we had a little Midwest and West Coast tour just prior to leaving the country. And we were playing the Jazz Alley in Seattle. And there's a great luthier out there.
Let's tell people what a luthier is.
Yes, and a luthier is a string person who creates, maintains, and string instruments, and particularly basses, violins, violas, cellos, and so forth and so on. Hammond Ashley. Hammond Ashley being there in that area, of course, when I got there, we had a day off. So first thing I'm going to do, I want to go see Hammond Ashley. I just want to go play some of his basses and just hang out in the wood, smell the wood and all of that. And so went out to his shop and he said, "Hey, Carroll, try this one." I'm like, "Okay, try that one." It was cool. All of them are great. He said, "Try this one, try that one." It was cool. I'm like, "Okay, it's cool." And in this instrument right here, I tried that one and I said, "Oh my gosh. What the kids say today is like butter. It just melted." And I always say that your instrument is an extra appendage of your body. And this instrument was it was my other arm. And I just fell in love playing with this. And I said, "Oh man, I love this." And he said, "Well, you can have that if you want." I'm like, "Come on, man, leave me alone. Let me get out of here." So went on and went to the gig venue at the Jazz Alley, and we were going to have sound check. And when I got there, got up on stage, and this instrument was sitting there for me.
The bass sitting right next to you now.
This instrument right here was sitting there. Hammond Ashley had set it up the way I wanted it, and or the way I liked it, and he said, "Play it for the week. No charge, just play it for the week." So I played it all week, and then of course I I was already in love with it, and then I just said, "Okay, I want it." So there went all the money for the week, on the bass, and so I had it shipped home to Greenville, and I actually got home before the instrument did, and then I left for Europe because we were leaving the next day or so, and I left, and so I didn't see it. It was in the crate when I got back, maybe 3 months later, and it was here at the house, and I just love it, and It's been through the war. It's had cracks, but it's one of the most incredible sounding instruments that I've ever had. It's not a big sound, but it's soft and sweet, and I just love it.
Well, play a little something there. You wrote a song for Dr. Taylor.
Yes, yes.
Called
B&D's Blues or D&B's Blues. I'd mix it up all the time, and it's Billy Taylor and Carroll Dashiell's blues. And I wrote this for him and had the pleasure of playing it for him just prior to his passing, and it got his approval. So, and I've recorded on this instrument many times, and it's just a great instrument. I rarely take it out of the house now. It's just incredible. But this is B&D's Blues.
I want to talk about something that you've been involved in for many years, and with another North Carolinian, Dr. Clarence Knight from Farmville, North Carolina.
Yes.
I believe Clarence's father was a high school or a junior high principal there at one time.
In Farmville,
Talk
yes.
a little bit about Clarence and how you know him and what you guys are involved in.
Dr. Knight, Dr. Clarence Knight, just an incredible musician, another mentor. He is a person who has interceded in so many musicians, African-American musicians, working. He was one of the first contractors in the Washington, D.C. area that would hire African-Americans. He was one of the first African-American contractors. He's one of the contractors and turned into being the contractor for the majority of the Motown acts that come out of the West Coast, Detroit area. Anytime they come to the East Coast, they call Clarence, and Clarence will facilitate putting the bands together. Horn sections, rhythm sections, individual players, and so forth and so on.
So if it's Aretha Franklin,
Clarence
does it.
Yes. Gladys Knight.
Clarence does it.
Temptations,
Yep.
Four Tops, anybody.
From Farmville, North Carolina.
From Farmville, North
Yeah.
Carolina. And actually, just recently, Suggs High School honored him, and they brought him back. And I didn't realize.
In Farmville.
Yes, in Farmville. And he called and he said, "Carroll, we're coming down." And so Rhonda and I went and picked he and Phyllis, his wife, up, and we went out to Farmville. And they were doing the unveiling of a mural there at one of the buildings. And they said, "Now we're going to sing the alma mater and Clarence had written the alma mater. He wrote the alma mater, and I didn't know that. And it's nice tune. But Clarence also is the conductor of the Clarence Knight Orchestra, who in his conducting, he does the Congressional Black Caucus TV show each year. And we were talking. We actually just got back. I just got back from doing that this weekend
At the Convention Center in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, at the Convention Center in Washington, D.C. And it's just an incredible, production, and to all different types of dignitaries, celebrities, stars. In actuality, the featured artist this year was another North Carolinian, Anthony Hamilton, and the Hamiltons, I think they're called. So he was the performing artist there. But we do the music each year. Had the pleasure of writing arrangements for various presidents, play-ons, playoffs, things like that, special selections for different dignitaries, playing behind different artists. I remember one performance we were doing where Patti LaBelle was doing the show. She was the artist, and typical thing. Always technical problems happen. The music, the tracks went out. She only had her musical director there, and acoustic grand piano. He's playing, he's killing, and they're playing the track. She's singing, she's killing. Audience is screaming, everything's going on. Tracks go out. So then we ended up having to play and to give the rest of the rhythm section, particularly to play the rest of, because with everything going out, the only thing you heard was the piano, nothing else. You heard everything went out. So we jumped in and played. Freddie Jackson was one of the artists that we, similar thing happened. Clarence is always looking out, and the thing that's very cool about that, Clarence Knight and Arthur Dawkins. I mentioned Arthur Dawkins before, another mentor of mine. Making sure that the African American musicians work in the halls, the Kennedy Center, the National Theater, the Warner Theater, Ford Theater. Those were two of the musicians, or are two of the musicians and contractors that really make it happen. In DC, the Musicians Union is made up of two, 161 and 710. Those are the two unions. One was white, one was black.
And that was traditionally all across the country.
All across the country,
with,
yes.
During segregation, there was a white union and a black union.
Right. And the funny thing about that, the musicians didn't care what color you were. We just want to play. If you couldn't play, or you couldn't swing or play a pocket, then you would have problems.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter what color you were, you just wanted to play together. But the union said that, okay, the white musicians can only do the white shows and the black musicians could only do the black shows. So of course what happened, the premise was, let's bring them together so it'll be equitable in everybody. But then it started out where the white musicians started doing the black shows, but the black musicians never did get called for the white shows. Clarence and Dr. Dawkins were both doctors were very instrumental in making sure that equity happened. And I could never forget Clarence for that, could never forget Dawkins for that. Just incredible.
So the Clarence's Orchestra is featured each year for the during the National Black Caucus, a week-long event.
Yes.
And of course, very big during presidential years.
Yes.
Security's pretty tight.
Yes.
They get you in there and don't let you move. How many years have you been playing in that orchestra?
Well, it's funny. We were just talking about that this weekend, and there was one year. I'll start with this. There was one year where we did not get called. They decided they were going to go in a different direction. That famous story. We're going in a different direction. So they called George Duke. George Duke was an incredible, George Duke, incredible musician, and he went in, did the show, everything was good, but the very next year they called us back. So we've been doing it over 35 years. Wow. And it's been, and we didn't even really stop to think about it until we were talking about, all of the years, and we were talking about how many people we've met and seen, during the course of doing these shows. One of the shows that we did, it was incredible. We did Ashford and Simpson, and this was just before Nick Ashford passed. And I mean, Valerie and Simpson, they wrote all those Motown tunes. Ain't No Mountain High Enough. All of those tunes. And here we are. We were playing playing with them, you know, during their show. And it was just fun. So, and the thing that's great about that is everything comes down to money. So you don't want to pay for a lot of rehearsal time. You don't want to pay for a lot of performing time. So what they would do is we go up usually and we will rehearse a Thursday evening. We rehearse play-ons, play-offs music. The artist that we will play behind comes in for an hour rehearsal in the afternoon on Friday, and then we hit the next day. Usually we have to go in very early because of security. One of the highlights for me on that is the security dogs. I love the dogs. They're beautiful. And but I mean, they go completely through everything. I mean, even your umbrella. If you have an umbrella, they go through it. And the Secret Service is great. I mean, they're very accommodating. And one interesting story I'm going to say about this, and then I'm going to stop because I'm going to cry. This actual instrument that we were talking about, we were doing, it was a jazz set. I think we ended up doing Shirley Horn or somebody. And so I had to do upright bass also. And this was one of the times when I had enormous amount of space in my little area where I am, because, you know, we've got the headphones, you know, everything is just around. But I had a lot of space. So I had my bass sitting here, my electric basses, I had 2 electric basses sitting here. So I'm just kind of engulfed. Everything is there. Everything is good. And so we had to have the last security sweep. And so the stage is elevated probably 35, 40 feet off the ground. And then you have risers on top of that. All of this space, no problem. My bass case is sitting over there, and I can actually see it. So again, it's off camera and everything, no problem. Final security sweep. For some reason, everybody moved at about or approximately the same time, and the stage shifted just a little bit. My bass fell off of the chair, and the security railing was about where the bass is now. Security railing was about that high. When the bass fell off, it hit the peg box and broke and split the peg box right in half. Everything at the top. I mean, it was like a clean cut. And it was bad enough that happened. It sounded like a shotgun or something went off. And everybody froze. Secret Service froze. You could see, you know, because it's nothing else going on at the time. And it's just boom, and it just goes. And then everybody, I think that's the first time I've ever seen Secret Service actually have an emotion, because everybody looked at the bass and the peg box was gone. And what was worse, the show was just getting ready to start. So I didn't even have time to pack it up. So all I had to do was I had to sit it on its case. So all while I'm doing the show, all I can see out the side of my head is my bass with no head on it. And then that night when I packed up to go back to the hotel, I put it on, and then so the case is just flopping because there's no head on it. I was just, yeah, so that's it. Hazards of being on the road.
Oh, gosh. What an interesting story. I want to talk about a call you got one day from Howard University. They'd received a call from East Carolina University. What was it East Carolina University was up to?
I still ask that question sometimes today. ECU called Howard, and they were looking for, particularly an African-American person to come and direct the jazz ensemble at East Carolina University. And the people at Howard called me right away, and they said, you know, would you consider going down to East Carolina University?
You were doing some teaching.
Yes, I was doing some teaching. I was at the University of District of Columbia, and I was on the road back and forth, but I was still in and out, and I was teaching there. But they asked me to come down, and I said, well, no, I don't think so, because I'm good here, and my schedule here is working because, you know, I'm in and out, and I can go, and everything was fine. So I said no, and they said, well, you know, I want you to come down. It's in Greenville. And I said, okay. I said, well, my mom is from Greenville, and they said, so come down. So the typical thing happens with Greenville and Greenville. My mom is from Greenville, South Carolina. So I hear Greenville, so I'm thinking South Carolina. I didn't even hear North Carolina at all. So then they say it's North Carolina. I said, well, okay, what is Greenville, North Carolina? I said, okay, well, I'll fly down. And they said, well, it's going to be interesting getting here, flying. And I said, yeah, well, schedule-wise, I have to really make sure because I was going out or something. And so I said, I'll come down and take a look. But I had really no intentions of doing it. I just said I would come and check it out. So I came down. Rhonda and I flew down. And this was the time we didn't have our large airport that we have now. I mean, literally, the airport was maybe about as large as this room. And I walked off the plane, and Harold Jones, who was the instrumental department chair, met me at the door of the plane. That's how the security was.
This is late 1980s.
Yes, 1988, 89. And so long story short, I came over, did the interview, and it was in and out the same day. Long day of activities and interview. And I said, okay, I'll think about it. But Rhonda and I had really discussed it already, and we were actually sitting in Raleigh's airport. And I said, well, it's nice, but I don't know. But the interesting thing that happened was, this is the way Rhonda and I are talking to each other. I said, did you notice the street that we turned on? Because during the time they took us around to look at some houses and in neighborhoods. And I said, did you notice the street that we turned on? She said, no, I didn't. I said, it was Eleanor Lane or Eleanor Street. My mom's name is Eleanor. And I said, did you notice the street name that one of the houses that they took us to see was on? And she said, no, I didn't notice. I said, it was Summerall Street. Okay. I had just done a recording project for Melba Moore and Vincent Stovall, who had written this music. Vincent and his wife had difficulty conceiving a child, so they adopted. And the name of the daughter that they adopted was Summerall. So I said, this is sitting in Raleigh's airport. I said, that's kind of freaky one way or the other, because Greenville, not South Carolina, but North Carolina, but Greenville, Summerall Street, the house, Summerall, Eleanor to turn in on the block. So I said, oh my goodness. I said, God works mysterious ways. Threes. I said, so you've got Summerall, you've got Eleanor, and Greenville. I said, so maybe I should think about it. So we get home, and I say, okay, well, maybe we'll take it. And I said, no, we're not going to take it, because I was getting ready to go over to Europe. So I said, we're not going to take it. So then I get a call again, and they said, will you come on? And I said, I'm not going to take it. We appreciate it. They said, well, we'll sweeten the pot a little bit. I said, okay, all right, we'll think about it. So I thought about it. And that summer, Bobby Watson and Horizon, we had done just a little tour of North Carolina. And Bobby and I drove because we had just recorded a record, and we were listening to the record in the car. So he was driving his family, and I was driving my family. We were just around. And so I said, that's interesting. All of this North Carolina thing is happening, so maybe we should think about it. So anyway, Ron and I eventually decided to accept the gig, and we said, okay, we're going to be there 2 years, 3 years, and we're out. Then 3 years, 5 years, we're out. 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, we're out. So now 31 years later, we're still here.
We'll talk a little bit about your life as an educator. You've spent more than 3 decades teaching. You've always taught and mentored friends and fellow musicians, but you came to East Carolina University and accepted that position, and you've done a lot of things there. You wrote the curriculum for the Jazz Studies program. And,
yes.
Tell us some about some of your things at ECU.
Well, I always say that I'm very blessed, very fortunate to have such an incredible, I call them bunch of students. I've had many over the years. I'm just very proud of them, their accomplishments. We have students that obviously are pursuing music, music careers, and appendages of music. But we also have people that have come through the music program and the jazz program that I've had the privilege of working with, that are real estate agents, bankers, national security agents, and so forth and so on. And I've just been very, very blessed to have such a great group of students. I always say that I learn from them each and every day, and I only hope that they learn a little bit from me, but I learn as much from them every day. And so I always look at it as it's family, but it's also musicians interchanging musical ideas. Doesn't mean that I'm a better musician than you are, or you're a better musician than I am. It may mean that I've just had maybe a little bit more experience than you had, or different experiences that I can bring to the table. And what's very cool about that is the majority, they've been receptive, and they've gone out and doing wonderful things. I'm very, very proud of them. I started teaching when I was about 18 years old. I had my first college teaching gig when I was 18, and I taught at the St. Mary's College of Maryland. I was the strings instructor where I taught violin, viola, cello, and bass, and electric bass. I was actually taking classes at Howard and traveling to St. Mary's County, Maryland, to teach in between classes during the course of the week while I was at Howard. Then I also taught at the University of the District of Columbia. Calvin Jones was very instrumental in getting me there. Another mentor of mine, trombonist extraordinaire, played with the Basie and the Ellington Band. So I taught there, and then ended up here at ECU, and I've been here. This is the 31st year, and it's been a great. When ECU first called, they asked me to come down and just be the jazz ensemble director. Once I got here, kind of assessed the situation and saw that there was a desire from the students to have more major degree type classes in jazz studies. So got on the track to developing a curriculum for a jazz major, and so we've had pretty good success over the years.
You have some notable students. I want you to talk about people that have gone on and played with some of the biggest names in the business. They too have gone on to share their knowledge with other people, teaching throughout the country. Who are some of those people that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, one person that I like to speak about quite a bit is Dr. Dorsey Mitch Butler. Mitch Butler was one of my trombone students. He did his undergraduate work with us. Then he came back and did his graduate work, became a graduate teaching assistant. He is now the assistant director of jazz studies at the University of Kansas with Bobby Watson. And he's performed with a little bit of everybody from the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra. He's producing records and performing. Terrell Levon Ambrose from Jacksonville, North Carolina, saxophonist. Citizen of the Year in Alexandria, Virginia. He's presenting festivals and concerts and performances. He just did a major project with Charlie Parker and Strings featuring Von Ambrose. Von Ambrose married one of my very first bass students, Robin Ambrose. And so they're living in the Virginia area, Alexandria, Virginia, and doing great things. Damon Brown, the bass instructor at North Carolina Central University, became one of my graduate teaching assistants. Dr. Chip Krotz is the director of bands at Georgia Tech University and performing, playing a little bit of everywhere. So that's Ms. Deb Nanstill, vocalist. She did jazz vocals with me. I found Deb, I always joke, the story with Deb is I found Deb in the gymnasium of Havelock High School. She was a cheerleader, and she was singing with the band, And George Benitez was one of our alums from ECU, said, D, I got this little vocalist I want you to hear. And I'm like, okay, cool, man, cool. So we went down and did a performance, and Deb was there, and I said, well, let me hear you sing something. She sang a little bit, and I said, okay, you're going to sing with my band today. And Deb just finished making her Metropolitan Opera debut. And Rochelle Rice, another jazz vocalist on the scene in the Washington, D.C. area. She was one of my undergraduate students, and she went on to leave here, and she got her master's degree at Howard University and started singing with the famous group Afro Blue. And then, of course, we'll talk about her at some point. Is my youngest daughter, Carroll Dashiell, who she studied with me, not at ECU so much, but at the dinner table and then here in the studio. And she went on to sing with Afro Blue and has done other things also.
You have been mentioned, honored, nominated many times. You were the 2002 Downbeat Magazine Jazz Educator of the Year. And yes. You've been honored by the North Carolina Board of Governors, national awards and recognitions for your mentoring and excellence in teaching. And by talking about just a few of your graduate success stories, quite an impressive roster of people touched by CVD, Dr. D, Carroll Dashiell Jr. And knowing some of those folks, they appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate them.
Let's talk about your children. Not only are you nationally and internationally known, so are your kids. You've passed some of that on. You have 4 children.
Yes, 4 children.
And the oldest is Cameron?
Yes, Cameron.
Oldest daughter?
Yes, oldest daughter.
She's an actress?
Yes, she's an actress.
A singer?
Singer, pianist.
Pianist?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Worked on Broadway?
Worked on, off-Broadway. Off-Broadway,
yeah.
And done a lot of professional productions. I always get the character mixed up, but she was in the production Chicago, and at Big Betty, so I can't remember that character.
Very accomplished.
Yes, but she's done that, and in our Motown review show that we do now, she is one half of the combination up front of the front line with she and Christy, our youngest daughter. Cameron is we call them Fire and Ice, and Cameron is Fire.
Let's talk about the Motown review. Mm-hmm. We haven't chatted about that. You have written and produced a Motown type show that yes. is a tribute to the many great Motown acts. Tell us, how did that come about, and tell people about it that aren't familiar.
Yes. Well, I actually wrote this show way back in the day, in the early 80s, and we've been performing it in different scenarios, different configurations over the years. And the idea came to me actually from a show that Dr. Gilbert Pryor had written entitled Black Reflections. And so it kind of evolved out of that. And it's set in the tradition of the old touring Motown reviews. But it's evolved over the years from just the review to adding contemporary tunes, popular tunes of today, whatever today is, incorporating a dance contest with audience participation. And it's really to highlight the African Americans' contributions to the music industry. And it's a fun show, family show, and it's evolved to the point where it's most of my family performing the show. As I said, Cameron is one half of it with being Fire. Christy is the other half of it, being Ice, the vocalist out front. CV is the assistant musical director on drums. Christian is the youngest son who actually plays bass, and when I do parts of the skits, Christian will come in and play bass. So it's a fun show. Former students, as I talked about Mitch and Vaughn, they're godchildren of ours now. Alan Johnson is one of the pianists that plays the show, and Alan actually reminded me, and he's a godson, he actually reminded me that he was one of my students way back in the day at the University of District of Columbia.
Oh my God.
And Warren Jones, who is an incredible musician, accomplished musician, and has worked with many named artists, is one of the keyboard players. He's a nephew. Marvin Santos is one of our Brazilian exchange students that came to ECU, and he's a godson now. So
An amazing group, and what a entertaining and crowd-pleasing show.
it's a fun show. It's a fun show. We have a lot of fun, and again, the thing that I'm really excited about more than anything else is family oriented. So you can bring your children, your grandparents, your great grands. Anybody can come to the show, and it's meant for everyone.
Carroll, we digressed a little bit about the Motown show, but we should have. And talking about Cameron, let's talk about your second oldest, your namesake, Carroll Von Dashiell III. You call him CV, world-class percussionist, lives up in the Northeast and plays with often the who's who of the music world. What are some of CV's activities these days?
Yes, well, he's an incredible young man, first of all, an incredible musician, incredible drummer. CV is the one that I would say probably started playing with me first. When CV was a baby, he would crawl to the kitchen cabinets and he would actually pull out pots and pans from under the sink, take pencils or spoons and beat on them, tap on them. But we noticed that it wasn't necessarily that he was just like just banging on things. He actually was very concerned about the sound and the timbre of the instruments that he was pulling. So if he didn't like the sound, he would push that particular pot or pan away. But he would arrange them in a manner where there was some type of form or some type of melodious thing that was happening, but he was very particular about that. And that's one of the things that he's known for now is the tuning of his drums when he plays, tuning the drums to fit the occasion. All drummers mostly tune their drums, but he's very particular about that. He's performing quite a bit. One of his steady gigs is the Metropolitan Baptist Church. He's a minister of music there, one of the ministers of music there. But he also plays with the incomparable Sean Jones, Mr. Warren Wolf. That's just to name a couple, but he's playing with a lot of different people. He's one of the first call studio musicians in the DC area. Kennedy Center is one of the first call. He does often a lot of the military bands and organizations performances. He's not in the military, but whenever their drummers cannot make the performance, he's the first call.
Let's talk about your second youngest, Christy Dashiell.
Yes, Christy Dashiell. Christy is our vocalist, and she is incredible. Her career is blossoming now. Christy went to Howard University and she made Afro Blue, and she's probably known a lot. A lot of people have seen her on the TV show The Sing Off,
Which was on the NBC television network.
Yes, it was on.
And it was a cappella groups.
Yes, a cappella groups.
And Afro Blue is the a cappella student group.
Yes.
At Howard University in Washington, D.C.
Yes, and it started out as a class, and the group took off so well that they ended up changing the name to Traces of Blue because there had to be a differentiation from the class of Afro Blue and then the TV group. And so Christy was one of the lead singers in Afro Blue.
And they were in the finals.
They were in the finals, yes, they were in the finals. And from that, Christy has gone on. She was a finalist in the Thelonious Monk competition.
Let's explain what that is.
Yes, and the Thelonious Monk competition
is a jazz vocal competition.
It's a jazz competition, yes. And each year they feature an instrument or vocals. And the particular year that she was in, they featured vocals, and she was a finalist in that. She's gone on from there to record her first CD that actually was on the charts, rating higher than one of Miles Davis's charts, one of his CDs, and but she's performing with everyone in the industry now. When I say everyone, a lot of people. She was featured with Makoto Ozone in Japan as a featured artist with Makoto's group. She's performing with Helen Sung, doing her own thing also with Christy Dashiell and the Christy Dashiell Quartet, which CV and Christian are members of, and Alan Johnson are members of her group. And she just recently did the Lincoln Center Orchestra with Maestro Wynton Marsalis.
And the Marsalises are no strangers to the Dashiell family.
No, we kind of know each other a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
I would say so. You know, it was interesting too. I was sorry that the Afro Blue group that Christy was involved in on the network TV show and contest were not the winners, but they came back. Christy and one of the members were featured the next week.
Yes,
Tell us
they
about
were.
that. Yeah.
Yes, that was a great experience. Reginald Bowens, who was the bass voice of that particular group, and Christy came back. They brought them back to sing with, I guess it was a compilation that they did, and they had a great time. And I think Mr. Smokey Robinson was a feature, and
I think he was too.
Yeah, they got to hang out with Smokey a little bit.
That was pretty impressive.
It was a lot of fun.
Let's talk about your youngest son, Christian. An incredible bassist.
Yes.
And like his brothers and sisters, has traveled the world with some of the greats. Tell us about some of those.
Yes, well, Christian is an incredible musician. And when the family gets together and all of our kids get together, they all joke and they say that Christian, in their opinion, is the most talented out of all of them. Christian has perfect pitch, and that's something I always like to talk about, because when they were coming up, they had games that they would play where they would say, "Christian, what's that pitch? What's that pitch?" And they would go back and forth, and he would say, "Oh, that's such and such a thing," and he would get them. And but he is an incredible musician. When Christian was a baby, Christian would actually crawl outside the studio and listen while I was practicing, and he was taking it all in and just listening and absorbing everything. But then when I would stop practicing and get ready to go out the door, he'd take off and run. But he has performed with the likes. He went to University of North Carolina Central and studied there with Dr. Ira Wiggins. And my former graduate TA, Damon Brown, was his bass teacher at Central. But being there, Christian has performed and toured with Mr. Branford Marsalis, the other maestro, and he's had a great time with him also. And Christian is performing with me now, and we're having a good time.
Let's talk about your CD for a minute.
Okay.
Heir to the Throne.
Yes.
Critically acclaimed, a wonderful recording. The CVD Ensemble. It's a family project.
Yes.
And you've written a lot of the material for that.
Yes.
Tell us about your experience in producing that.
Well, it was a fun project. The project that we did, it was the beginning of what the next project is entitled Lineage. And just trying to draw the connections and the familiarities and how we get from point A to point B, but how it's all a group effort. And that particular CD, Heir to the Throne, the title cut I actually wrote for our oldest son, CV, the drummer. And it's actually a bass and drum feature. And had a really good time with that. Dr. Jeff Baer is featured on it.
And he's another professor at East Carolina University.
Yes, he's a professor at East Carolina University, and now the current director of jazz studies there. And Mr. John Osment, who was a pianist out of the Washington, D.C. area. John and I grew up together. We cut our teeth playing with so many different people. One of the groups that we played with together and recorded with, the famous Buck Hill on the Muse label, I'm beginning to see the Light CD and a couple other CDs. I can't even remember the names now, but John is on that. CV, Jeff, and myself. So it's really a quartet. We've expanded the group a little bit now in live performance, and we incorporate Marvin Santos on guitar some, and then Alan Johnson plays the keyboard book some. But the project was fun. All original compositions, different settings, and featuring all of the various artists. Try to put them in the. My concept is similar to that of Ellington, where Ellington, in his arranging and writing, would try to write the music where it would showcase the strengths and the greatness of the individual players.
Rhonda, Carroll's done a lot of things, and you've been right there with him the entire time. What do you think is next for Carroll and Rhonda Dashiell?
Wow, that's a good question. Ultimately, what I would like to do, and I think Carroll, we've discussed it before, is something that we would like to do as we approach retirement age, and we are kind of knocking at that door in the next few years. We have always said that we would like to have a place for musicians and artists as well to heal. As we all know, there's a lot of drug addiction, alcohol abuse, and a few other things that lie heavily in the world of the arts. And what we have discovered, and what I've discovered in my recent years, is that a lot of the abuse of drugs and alcohol and substance abuse comes from self-medication. And what I've discovered, and even with Carroll being on the road, that a lot of times the substance abuse and drug abuse is a part of a way of coping for them. And we'd like to maybe try to tap into that area as a source of healing, as Carroll has been involved in the industry, and so have our children and many other family members. And they were all able to escape it, and I think we all have a tendency to have some type of behavioral health issue. So that's something I think we would like to move forward within the community, to try to find a place of healing and education for artists. So I'm hoping to kind of move in that direction eventually with my husband.
You've traveled the world, played with the greats, arranged, composed. You're a great mentor, teacher. You're more than 3 decades an educator. What's next for Carroll Dashiell?
Well, I actually want to take some time and kind of rediscover Carroll Dashiell in all aspects, particularly writing and arranging. There's some more studying that I want to do. I think that the journey never ends. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So there's a lot of studying that I want to do. I want to do some revisiting of some music, some concepts, and some cultures also. So I think focusing in on that. I guess that's selfish a little bit, but I think I want to rediscover CVD.
Well, sounds like a good thing to do, and I know that you've been working on a book, some teaching materials,
Yes.
A number of items, and hope that you will complete those and people can benefit those as much as they've benefited from all the other things that you've done. We appreciate you meeting with us today and sharing a lot of great stories, and appreciate you being a North Carolina Trailblazer.
Thank you.